Welcome to our special edition of the LFC Delaware podcast. Doing two editions this weekend to celebrate the fact that the Reds are champions once again. With us, we've got Sean Rogers, and those of you who are fans of the Anfield Wrap and consider the review the best show, then you're in for a treat, we hope.
No pressure.
No, none at all. None at all. But you're likely to experience plenty of boxing metaphors, so maybe some things out there for you to Google. So welcome, Sean.
Thanks, guys.
Good to have you on. We're going to do our usual, we're not going to do our announcements. We're going to do our usual thing, though, of kind of getting Sean to tell us his Liverpool story about some of his earliest memories and some of the things that he holds dear from his first memories of supporting the Reds.
Technically, I should have been a Blue. So I don't know. I'm sure you guys know, but basically, sort of pre-Second World War, if you were Catholic, you were an Everton fan, and if you're a Protestant, you're a Liverpool fan. So, like post-Second World War, it wasn't like Glasgow Rangers and Celtic in terms of like Protestant Catholic. I think that died out a bit, so to speak. So my family were all Roman Catholic, so they were Everton fans, and my granddad had a pub in and around Anfield, and he had like Howard Kendall, Alan Ball, Colin Harvey, all them kind of, to be fair, absolute Everton legends and English football legends at the time, going there, Brian LeBone, people like that. But back in those days, you go and watch Everton one week, and then when Liverpool were at home, all the same gang would go and watch. You all went to each ground, basically. And I think my granddad was more into the theatre of it than actually being like a passionate football fan or whatever. It was more, that's what you did on a Saturday afternoon. So my granddad was friends with an Everton manager. And this Everton manager basically got sacked and found out via the Echo.
Oh, wow.
So out of loyalty to his mate, he said, I'm not stepping foot in Goodison Park ever again. So when his mates would still go to Anfield to watch the Liverpool games, because it'd be a mix of Liverpool and Everton fans, my dad, who, was at that point in time I think he was like 7 or 8 or 9 or something, they just threw him in the boys' pen in the Cop. So my dad actually grew up being a Liverpool fan, whereas all his older brothers and sisters were still Everton fans, basically. So very lucky for me, because I was obviously just brainwashed from birth that I was going to be a Liverpool fan. I became a Liverpool fan, and my dad had, unfortunately, my dad had gone from being a boys' pen, then a Copite, to a main stand season ticket holder. So
we talk about the implications of being a main stand season ticket holder.
Yeah, so basically I was going into a load of miserable old men who completely lost their hunger because they'd seen Liverpool win everything from the 60s, the 70s and the 80s, and even that wouldn't make them happy, basically. But my first game, I'm pretty certain my first game is the QPR game with Barnes. But I think it's Barnes' home debut in the 87-88 season. I've got the tiniest vaguest memory. I was there for the Spurs win 87-88 when Liverpool clinched the title. And then kind of the 88, 89, 90, 91 team, that Kenny team, that's the team that I fell in love with. They're my first love. So I was born in 1981, despite the uphill paper round that you can no doubt see on screen right now. So I'd have been, 8.5 when Liverpool won the league title before this one. So that was the team I fell in love with, John Barnes, Ian Rush, Peter Beardsley, obviously the end of Alan Hansen's time. But that was the team I like. This team probably will surpass it, which I say with a heavy heart. The 87 to 91 side is just sex on legs, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's just unbelievable as a side. Like, in a parallel universe, they probably should have won 4 league titles.
Yeah,
back to back. Like 88, they walk it. I think 89. Various. I mean, any sort of different world, they win that. 1990, they win it, and then in the 91 season, they win the first 10 league games. And then you've got all the stuff going on behind the scenes and Kenny leaving and everything else. I honestly think you're not a million miles away from that team having won 4 league titles, and they probably should win the FA Cup in 88. They do win it in 89. They're leading in the semi-final in 90. Do you know what I mean? Kenny leaves when we're still in the FA Cup in 91. I mean, it was just such a dominant side. And this one's probably the first one that's come close to that.
At that point in time, I had a season ticket in the... I guess what even then was the Kemlin Road stand. So, if you've listened to previous podcasts, you'll know that I was privileged to be on that side of the ground when Liverpool kicked into the Kop end and Barnes was playing on the left wing. It's just it was a privilege, I think, to being able to watch all that. So the stuff about Reds and Blues, we've not really talked about that much on previous podcasts. But I also have to make a confession that my sister is an Evertonian, because our family equally had different things that were going on. But fortunately, I was never tempted by the dark side. So you really have then felt like for 30 years we were almost there, never going to be there. Talk to us a little bit about the experience, the kind of roller coaster of the moving on from the Barnes era to kind of where we are now and all the stuff that happened in between.
Yeah, I think when we signed Collymore in the mid-90s, I just thought that the Collymore-Fowler McManaman combination was going to probably put us to the title. Obviously, 96, whet your appetite a bit. 97, I think Barnes scores that quite famous goal where we're away at Southampton and Dave Besant, the goalie, basically duffs his kick and Barnes scores a P-roller, basically crawls into the net away at Southampton, which back then was a tough place to win, I think. I think back then we hit something like 42 points at the halfway season. And normally then, like if you hit 75 points or more, you're winning the title. So to hit 42 around halfway, it really looked like it was going to be our season, and then we threw it away, and obviously the defensive and goalkeeper problems cost us. So that was a heartbreak, and then all of a sudden that team just completely fell apart, and then obviously Gerard Houllier comes in and rebuilds that, and you have that 2002 season, sort of just Robbie gets sold, and Elka comes in on loan, and you're like, okay. We finished this season like a steam train here. Like, you think at that point in time, United are maybe just about to go off a cliff. Yeah. And again, I think, just typical us really, like of all things, Houllier has his heart problem. And, you could argue whether he should have come back or not. And when he does, he just doesn't quite seem the same guy. Didn't have the Midas touch in the transfer market. Some strange decisions. Across the board, and then you go into another rebuild job, obviously with Rafa, and then he's got to compete with Chelsea and everything else. And then you really think that the 2008-9 season, when you look at that squad of players, when you look at particularly the spine of that team, it's just a shame that like Steve Armstrong, who's a big United fan, was involved in United We Stand, a big like United fanzine. He's a really good guy, Steve. He's got some mad stories on the booze with United. You probably couldn't put on a podcast of any type. He still says that's the best United team he's ever seen, and it's our sod's law that that's the team that we decided to come up against. To be fair, and then when Rafa leaves, I'd almost resign myself to the fact that we might not win it. With the financial power of Chelsea, then you see what's going on at Manchester City. Then you've got. If you want to play the game of like income from the stadium, worldwide merchandise, United were ahead of us in that kind of area. And then when FSG take over, you kind of like, I don't really know how their model's going to be able to compete against anyone like that, really. Yeah. I'm probably thinking, unless there's some kind of salary cap or real hard financial fair play rules coming in the future, I'm just not sure I can see us ever potentially winning the title again. And then 13-14 obviously just comes as a shock to all of us, doesn't it? Yeah. We were having this conversation the other night. We all went out on in where we are in Merseyside. The weather was absolutely like outstanding back end of last week, middle of last week. So we decided that we'd go to the beach, like a little quiet area where we could socially distance, but even get the chairs out. And we were like, look, we'll we'll have a few gins, a few beers, and if it goes away, we'll celebrate. And worst case scenario, we haven't seen each other for a while, we'll just all be together. But we were discussing that after the Chelsea, the 13-14 and the Chelsea game, one of the lads there had said to his son, look, I just don't think you're going to win it in your lifetime. I think you should have to put up with the fact, I'm sure Burnley and Preston fans once upon a time thought they would win the league, So I honestly wouldn't take this for granted. As much as this team isn't going anywhere, like, at the same point in time, I just wouldn't take this for granted. It's such an achievement.
Yeah. I read I don't know if you've read Soccernomics, but they talk about how little difference most managers make to teams.
I think there's a 10-point swing. Yeah, I think there's a 10-point swing. I think if you've got a team that's a 70-point, like a year season team, I think a quality manager can get them up to maybe 80 points, and a shit one will get them down to 60.
And they were saying,
or Hodgson will take you down to 50. But like, I think there's a 10-point swing either way. Do you know what I mean? And I think even through Liverpool's time, I think if you look at the Houllier team, you know what I mean? I think you see Houllier at his best is maybe getting Liverpool 10 points more, and instead of going out in semis, getting them to, just getting that extra bit out of them. I think there's a 10-point swing either way, generally between utter Hodgson and, Rafa.
So I know you do you still coach, by the way?
Not currently, no. I kind of I'd been managing.
Yeah.
And then I had my UEFA licenses and stuff, and then there was a bit of a complex situation in Wales, which Welsh footy can be quite complex and political. Yeah. And basically, I've been offered a job in Welsh footy, which in hindsight, it's a good thing I didn't get it. But you had to be on your UEFA A license to get it, and the Welsh FA's view was I was English, so go away. And the English FA's view was, no, you're Welsh, so you have to get on the A license over there. So basically, there was a big... I couldn't get on the A license anywhere, basically. So the job fell through. And then my kids were getting older. My son has some special needs and stuff. I'm sort of self-employed. I've got a number of business interests and things. And just at that point in time, something just had to give. And to be fair, I was struggling. Like, it's probably something I'll go into detail in the future, but physically and mentally, I was just falling apart, to be honest with you. I'd lost my mum. I had my kids in hospital and stuff like that. It was such a hard time that, to be honest with you, I was like, I tried to do a few assistant jobs just to sort of keep my toe in. But then, funnily enough, I got my own season tickets for Liverpool. I've been on the waiting list for like 20 years or something. And I just took that as a sign that I got very fortunate that I got 3 tickets and I could pick where I wanted them. And I picked in behind my cousin. So there's basically 6 of us at Anfield, which in this day and age, you're lucky to get 1 ticket sat on your own in the middle of nowhere. Me and my family have now got 6 tickets on the halfway line in the main stand. And the chance to take my kids to the match and stuff like that, I just thought I'd park it for a bit. So yeah, I'm not currently coaching at the moment. Absolutely loved it when I was doing it, but I haven't missed it or anything like that. To a certain level, I achieved everything that I wanted to achieve.
Yeah. The reason for highlighting that was because your opinion about who's a good coach and who's not is not simply an opinion; it's born of some experience. Right?
Yeah, no, but you know what? I went to an event at St George's Park, so I was there with there was all sorts there, to be honest with you. The Everton management team had their backroom staff. There were lots of Premier League managers there. Do you know what? Who was there? Who was the kindest person there was actually Phil Brown, the old Hull manager, and Sam Allardyce's assistant. He was honestly a lovely guy. He was fantastic. Had time for everyone. And the Spanish FA were doing a demonstration. So the Spanish FA put like an hour and a half technical session on, all mic'd up, all with microphones in. They'd even put on translators. They put on this like just incredible session. It was really, really good. And what they'd done, they brought in Derby's under-18s, and I think they brought in Wolves under-18s. So the Derby under-18 players did the Spanish FA session, which the Spanish FA ran. And then the Spanish FA came and sat down just behind me in sort of St George's Park in this stand. And Roy Hodgson went on. to do his training, his drill with the Wolves under 18s. It's absolutely hilarious. The Spanish FA behind me, like, had their notepads out ready to take notes, and about 10 minutes in, they put the pens down. They'd given up. The Hodge, his drill starts with a long goal kick. I shit you not. He played in the game. Now, to be fair, he must have been mid-60s maybe around this time. You could get around the pitch and he's got a left foot on him, to be fair. But it was, bear in mind, he's involved with Wolves under 18s, and he's actually trying to be involved in the drill. No microphone on or anything, so no one knew what the hell was going on. And what was brilliant is two of the Wolves players turned around, like literally to the Derby players who are now sat like over there, and he went, "This is shit. Do you want to take my place?" With like the Spanish FA, English technical staff, Stuart Pearce. Yeah. It was really weird. It really was strange.
The long ball thing doesn't surprise me, because that kind of goes along with sort of the English coaching philosophy from 20 years ago. It's all about getting the ball, long balls, and they had some spurious data about how more goals were scored from long balls, which turns out to have been nonsense.
It was what was it? The position of maximum opportunity, POMO, or whatever rubbish it was called. Yeah. I think there's a load of things behind it, to be honest with you. And you could go on all day, but I think the standards improved massively. But the problem was it was a bit like a real bad version of your driving test. So you had a number of different, if you were a quality coach going through, the problem was a lot of people just wanted to manage how they'd been managed, because they might have been managed quite successfully, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So they didn't know any better. And then I think the best ones, I wouldn't class myself as this, but in terms of mentality, this was certainly the mentality I had. It was a bit like, I just need to pass my driving test. I'm not going to drive that way in a million years. Do you know what I mean? So I've got to pass my my badges, but never in a million years would I do a session like this. And I used to have a lot of people who were even UEFA or doing the pro license, and they'd ask me to work with my players. And in the end, I had to say no, because it's horrendous. It's changed now. But it was very much like stop, start, and forgetting anything else, in British weather, with the wind and the rain and everything else that you generally put up with sort of from October to March, that just doesn't make any sense at any level, to be honest with you. And the top managers European wide, which you could in even 10 years ago, you could access all this online. You know what I mean? There were some great subscriptions and publications where other coaches would go in and watch Rafa's Valencia team. Mourinho allowed them into Porto and into Milan and Chelsea even. So you could get your hands on. To be fair to Mourinho, he did a big portfolio for the Chelsea academy, and that either got leaked or released. You can still get that online now. It's basically all of Mourinho's sessions. And in a mad way, they're a bit more professional and they're more intense. But they're not a million miles off the kind of Liverpool boot room kind of sessions. Everything with a ball, everything small-sided game, very intense. And if you think about it's I don't know whether they did this deliberately, but if you think about the Liverpool boot room, they just used to do five-a-sides. Be talking about five-a-sides involving Graham Souness and Kenny Dalglish and people like this. So the quality of those games will have just been immense. It probably been harder training than it would have been having the game on a Saturday.
Right.
Whereas everyone else just running around football pitches or whatever. Whereas very much now that was the style of coaching. So I think the problem was the English FA and the like. Mm-hmm. They just weren't. All they had to do, in my view, I'm a big believer in modelling, and they should have been looking at the new form of manager coming through. Because if you go from Wenger up until in and around now, you had a load of people who hadn't been successful players, but had teaching ingrained in them, like Mourinho, Rafa Benitez, Arsene Wenger, Gerard Houllier, perfect examples, where because they haven't got the playing career to fall back on, and however they were coached or managed or whatever, they've had to just go out and go, well, what is the best way to do it? And really, they were incredible man managers, but also phenomenal teachers. and therefore they wanted to go out and figure out what the best way of doing things was. And that's what should have been modelled, really. And English football's just been playing catch up for a very long time. It's all very good. A lot of English managers sort of complaining about opportunities or lack of or whatever. I think they're finally getting it in the last few years, maybe. But Brendan Rodgers is one who I think got a lot of time for in terms of what he wanted to do, and that no matter where you are, if you want a top job, you're going to have to show that you can have teams playing in a certain way, in a certain style, if you like. And I think you've got to be brave enough to be willing to get sacked and commit to that style of play. Because otherwise, if you just take the view, I'm going to keep my job and try and stay in the league and play bad football, it's over. What you're going to do, try and put in a job, and you're going to know I won't do that there. You just can't take that risk. In this day and age, you just can't do that, especially with a worldwide brand like the Premier League is. You can go. You're in competition with people all over the world. You've got to be able to play a style of football that you think the top 6, the top 7 are going to want you, to be able to do it in their place.
Are there any other British managers apart from Brendan Rodgers that you would say are adapting? Because clearly we can think of some who haven't, and we've already mentioned one of them.
It's really difficult because, again, like, people are so scared about dropping out the Premier League. It's the same old sort of experienced names that you see getting jobs. Roy Hodgson still at Palace. Look, if you're a Palace fan, you're probably saying he's done a great job. What a great guy!
Yeah.
On the basis he's kept him in the league. Steve Bruce is in at Newcastle, but he's yesterday's man, or never has been, never will be kind of manager. Do you know what I mean? You look at Eddie Howe. Problem with him, I suspect that's just been almost with love, maybe a bit of a megalomaniac thing, in that he makes every single decision that there is at Bournemouth, and therefore he's not going to get that sort of anywhere else. It looks to me like it's just gone very, very stale. Yeah. And I suspect his opportunities may well have passed him by. And that's the problem when you look at things that are being done creatively. Like, look at Wolves. You know what I mean? Like, a few years ago, I think, was their manager a goalie coach or something like that?
I think so. Yeah. Yep.
So look at him now. He's leapfrogged everybody.
Yeah.
If you're looking around at what the jobs are, so I think that's really difficult. The pressure for about 12 or 13 teams in that league just to try and stay in the league is a bit of a nightmare. Yeah. And it's still sort of the same old names coming through. And the other problem is a lot of the players who played in the last 10, 12 years, multi-millionaires. Yeah. So unless you've got a real passion for it, which only so many will have, and I don't know how many of them will have the tools nowadays, in that to be at one of the top clubs, you're almost like a CEO. Yeah. I'm let's say allegedly here, but I am told that this is, let's say 99% true, but this is alleged in inverted commas. But when Moyes takes the United job, he's phoning people saying it's too big for me inside a month.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who managed Everton. And as much as we can take the piss about Everton, we're still talking about, at that point in time, a team that were just missing out on the Champions League at the time. And he's like saying, I got to the airport to go for a pre-season. There's 230 people in suits. I don't know who any of them are.
Yeah.
I wanted to take the players on a walk, didn't get security clearance, and I caused absolute mayhem and got bollocked. And what I mean, you're talking about an experienced guy there who's managed a club in Everton, a top 6, top 7 side or whatever, who just couldn't take that. It's almost like being a CEO. Yeah. There's so many different skill sets to be at one of them top clubs now, unless you've got the kind of the entourage around that, And if you look at the coaches at all the top clubs, not many of them are big names.
Yeah. So
I wonder whether you might see in the next decade a lot of people come from either the lower leagues or even arguably from academies, really making their way up rather than ex-players.
Yeah.
One manager that's struck me this season is Chris Wilder. What are your thoughts on Chris Wilder, and have they perhaps overachieved in the beginning of this season and maybe now coming back to earth, or?
I think they definitely overachieved. I mean, I think there's an element of maybe reverting to mean. But yeah, no, then the job he's done is absolutely incredible. But also, like, what I like about him is how tactically versatile they are. There's been a lot of coverage about what the centre-backs do, kind of the weird overlapping from the outside centre-backs and the movements from them. Sort of playing 3 at the back's gone a little bit out of fashion, which I kind of understand, certainly in top clubs. Most teams against a top team, look at Liverpool. Some people play no one up front against Liverpool and City anymore. But quite often you only play one up front. So having 3 at the back, you don't need 2 spare men. You've just lost a player somewhere else. But if you're Sheffield United or Wolves, you're not coming up against teams who might only play one up front against you because people fancy the chances. And it's something that I'm biased because when I was in Wales, it's a tactic that I used to use in that it sounds mad. I basically wouldn't have a system. We basically decided in the first 5 minutes of the game how we were going to play. So my team was geared to either play 4-3-3 or to play 3-4-2-1. And we would look at, in the first 5 minutes, we'd figure out, we have an idea about how the opposition were going to set up, but we'd double check in the first 5 minutes. And if they played 1 up, we would play 4-3-3. If they played 2 up, we'd basically drop the holding midfield player into the back 3. I was very lucky that I had a player able to do that role. And we had we had real good success with it. We massively overachieved on. We were favourites to come bottom, basically, and we ended up finishing top half and winning their equivalent of the League Cup, I suppose, and kind of the league and area we were in. So, I liked the way that they set up in that kind of style, really, and that kind of flexibility, and I think that's really exciting. I think the thing that goes against him is when you see his name and you see him, he's just not the sexiest, is he? Basically. So, when, you use Everton as an example, they go and get Carlo Ancelotti. Well, you can't fault Carlo Ancelotti from an experience point of view, but it's a real shame because you look at someone like Chris Wilder and you think to yourself, what's the guy got to do? Do you know what I mean? Because really, and I think it's funny in English football. I don't know what you guys think of this over there, because I think it's a lot more immersed into American sports culture. But in England, I'm amazed that the media and the press are so obsessed with a manager having the say over transfers. Do you know what I mean? I kind of get them having a veto, don't get me wrong, because the manager's got a pick or at least having a say. But I'm amazed that they think that someone who's got a UEFA badge and has played football should be making multi-million-pound decisions, multi-million-pound contract lengths, and thinks they've got the time to suddenly decide who they should be signing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that in itself is a bit mad in that if you take that element out of it and say we're going to basically treat this like a proper company and we're going to build an entourage, a board, departments that are going to be very successful, and we just want a guy in the middle of it who's going to be the glue that sticks that together, and actually his job is to be the head coach, then actually there's a number of jobs in English football where you could maybe look at Chris Wilder, in that respect, certainly interview him for it. So I wonder whether that'll change in England now. And it's also funny, a lot of the clubs they reference as almost thinking that the manager has a say. They don't. Liverpool's biggest mistake is that they called it. They came up with a name for it.
Right. Yeah.
They had the transfer committee. Every club does, but Liverpool put a name to it.
Anymore, though, do we? That's interesting. Now that it appears to be successful.
Listen, I think FSG have got lucky. To one extent, in that if Liverpool don't win the European Cup and win the league this year, I think a lot of people are saying, where's the money?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are saying, where's the money?
Yeah.
But the fact that they've been successful means no one's asking that.
Right.
Asking that question. But if we hadn't been, I think a lot of people are saying, whoa, we've made very good net spend here. We've been a very successful business. Not say, no one ever wants a place to go into debt or anything like that, but surely we've got the money to be able to outlay on players. But the job they've done, that's what I mean. I just think that the title success of Liverpool, I would argue, has probably been the biggest success in British football history to a certain extent. I think Leicester, you could probably trump that with. But I think it's one of the... Honestly, if you really understand what City are doing behind the scenes at their training ground and the fact that up until recently they've completely dominated everything at youth level in terms of everything that they do, then you look at the wealth that they've got, and they're probably a European Cup win away from really making some waves elsewhere, and building a bit of a legacy when you look 10, 20 years ahead, perhaps. They're an establishment that something to be really feared. And for Liverpool to, from what the Hodgson years and the start of FSG coming in, to be able to do what they've done without oil money, with the kind of net spend that they've had, in the kind of way that they've done it, and to hit the points totals that they've had to hit, and to bounce back from last year's disappointment, and to show this level of consistency for this long, it's absolutely outrageous.
So what is your thoughts about how they? What are some of the key things on the field that have enabled them to be so consistent? Because you're right, it's just unprecedented in terms of any era before now.
The spine is, the spine is massive, isn't it? If you go to any great consistent side, normally you're looking at that spine. And when you look at our spine, the front three can play so narrow. It's almost like looking at it that way. And you think of Alisson, Van Dijk, Fabinho, Henderson as perfect examples. And then that front three, I mean, that is just a spine that is a bit like the Liverpool of the late 70s, early 80s, where if you want to outplay them, that's fine. More than happy to go toe-to-toe with you playing football. If you want to have a war, more than happy doing that. And if you think of them Chelsea teams, something that I heard from inside at Liverpool is that sometimes against Chelsea and United, Liverpool felt a bit of an inferiority complex in the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because you just felt like men against boys. You were looking to your right-hand side, and it just seemed like 6'5" wide and 6'5" tall lads who were just as good at football as you, but were absolute, like American footballers, And I think this Liverpool team falls into that category of not only are we unbelievable at football individually, but on top of that, like, you want to go to war with us, we'll go to war with you. And that you've got that combination. And I think that's where, the transfer business in that regard has been phenomenal. And then the other thing is, the recruitment has just been majestic. And then when you've got a manager that has got I think anyone who's a manager at that level, in a weird way, has to have that kind of, we call it Joe Fagan, but for people to understand it, you might be looking at almost like Gordon Ramsay levels. And a pat on the back off Gordon Ramsay, if you work in his kitchen, will mean the world, like a Klopp hug. Do you know what I mean? I don't care who you are. But at the same point in time, would you want a bollocking off Gordon Ramsay? Probably not. Would you want a bollocking off Jurgen Klopp? No. Like, apparently a few players have walked into his office to sort of making a bit of a mistake because it's against club rules to do this, to basically go, why aren't I in the team? You're sent out the office.
Yeah.
Because the question, if you say, what do I need to do to get in the team? There's a conversation. If you say, why am I not on the team? You're questioning his judgment. There's not a conversation to be had. Get out.
Yeah.
I think that might have anything to do with why we haven't seen Xherdan Shaqiri much this year.
I think, to be honest with you, mid to late last season, he burnt his head out tactically. If you think of, you remember United away when there was a lot of pressure on Liverpool to win games.
Yeah.
United away, Everton away, he's on the bench. They don't even throw him on. And there was that fear that maybe you might score, but he'll give away the team shape and you might concede. And I just don't think there was enough trust there. I think if the right offer had come in the summer, they'd probably have let him go. And there's just been too many niggly injuries. And I think it's not quite at the Shankly levels of, if you're injured, you're a leper, go and stand in the corner and, you know what I mean, stand over there with the pigs, don't infect the rest of my team type thing. But I do think at Liverpool, one of the things that I think FSG, more importantly, have been aware of, which is something I've been surprised at, that more don't take this view, is that you can have the best 11 in the world, but if they're injured, what good is it to anybody? And one of the things with this Liverpool team is just how robust they are, and actually consistency of actually getting on the pitch, And I think you look at Shaqiri, just not been fit enough, not been available enough. And that's frustrating for a squad player. You've got to be available all the time. And funnily enough, I know he's leaving, but that's something Lallana's got better at.
Yeah.
In that Lallana's actually toughened up and been available more. And I think, that's something Naby Keita's got to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Because when those opportunities come up, you need them available. And the niggly injuries bits of it is, to a certain extent, that's not Liverpool's problem anymore. And I think Naby Keita's got the ability to, for my view, to be Footballer of the Year 1 year. But the bottom line is, if he's not going to be fit 85-90% of the time, then he needs to go. And I think that, give him one more season, and fingers crossed he can stay fit.
By the way, Sean, you're scoring a lot of points with Tim there with your Admiral Lallana reference.
Yeah, well, do you know that too? The problem for Liverpool is that there are a few squad players there that you just can't really afford to lose because of what they do in and around the Melwood. And Lallana's one of them, and he'll be an absolutely massive loss. Curtis Jones is going to take his place in the squad, but obviously what he brings and experience and sort of the glue that sticks the squad together in Lallana, you're not replacing that. And I think that's why it's really important that Liverpool keep Henderson, Milner. No one really mentioned it, but Gini Wijnaldum. It's very important Liverpool keep them around for as long as you can, even past the sell-by date, to be honest with you, because you forget what it's like on the training ground. And we've lost a few players who actually, like Sturridge and Moreno, who none of us wanted to see Moreno on the pitch necessarily, but in terms, like, he apparently trained phenomenally well, never caused a problem, was great in the dressing room. And you've got to remember, it's a 25-man squad. You don't need people there who aren't putting it in training or black a few little knocks so they're not involved or miserable or anything like that. And Liverpool have in the last couple of years lost a few players who won't affect what we do on the pitch directly, but in and around Melwood are quite big losses. Yeah. So it's going to be, I'm quite intrigued as to what they do in terms of how they beef up the squad. Because there's no easy answer. Do you buy first teamers and go, well, we beef it up that way? But then you've got a few more bigger egos and people want game time and nice problem to have, but it's still a problem. Or do you try and buy the more squad type players like we've had in Shaqiri and Lallana, but if someone's out for more than a few weeks, are they good enough to still get you to achieve their aims? You know, have they got that individual ability to ride that for you? That's a real difficult call to make. Sort of some of the rumours around Merseyside at the moment where that they might not have done too much transfer business, but in the final third, there might be a bit of an onus to try and do something now.
Do you expect to see them extend Gini? We're hearing a bit about maybe not, trying to extend him before the pandemic. Obviously, it's all gone quiet. Do you see him as one of those key locker room players that you want to keep around?
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem in them signing. I think Liverpool have also got a little bit lucky in that one of the biggest reasons people wouldn't sign for us has now become one of the biggest reasons they will. Funnily enough, in that Liverpool were one of the first clubs to apply a very low basic wage, by all accounts. And it's highly incentivized on terms of a bonus scheme. When FSG came in, their heads must have fallen off because I think we had 6 players back in 2011, well over 100 grand a week. I think you had Reina, Carragher, Gerrard, Johnson, Cole, Torres.
Wow.
And how many of them either had long left or were past their best or weren't fit or whatever? Do you know what I mean? There were problems, arguably there were problems with all 6 of them. To a certain extent, when they've taken over, and I think the problem for FSG is that put them off massively. I think it took them a few years to get. I think they went too far the other way. Basically, I think that completely. You're basically talking about 25 million a year going out on them 6 players, who you could argue have no resale value to Liverpool Football Club really, other than Torres, and even Torres, like. I think it was 2010-11. Like, still, he went in front of the main stand, and this stand burnt him off. And half the main stand were like, he's finished.
Yeah.
He's gone. So thank God they came and put 50 million in for him because he'd gone. Like, I could beat Silva this stand in a race. So Fernando Torres should have been. So it's probably been a bit kind on myself there. But I think FSG have got now the Liverpool players, because they've been so successful, they're now earning mega bucks. More so than they would have been if they'd have been on like a 150 basic, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So if you're someone like Firmino, who I believe when he first signed his basic was very, very low, Firmino's raking it in.
Yeah.
So it's, as long as Liverpool are successful, I think you'll see a lot of players not wanting to leave, because I think a lot of clubs would struggle to probably match the potential financial rewards that Liverpool get. And when you think of just how great a place it is to be, and we're successful in everything else, unless someone's Salah probably will. He's done Italy. You probably feel like he's right at the wrongs of his Chelsea time. I do believe at some point he'll go to Barca or Real Madrid. Undoubtedly, I think that will probably happen, which is fine. But I don't really see too many of the others really having that kind of view. So yeah, I think I see no doubt that Gini Wijnaldum will sign. I think we've just got to accept that some of these players are coming up to the last payday of their careers, and if you're their agent, you're not doing the job. If you don't link them away, if you don't try and spook Liverpool a bit, Liverpool will have to play their own game of poker as well. They all know that internally. It won't rub anyone up the wrong way. Do you know what I mean? And you saw against Crystal Palace why Gini's so important, in that, a bit like Ronnie Whelan in a way, that even if Gini doesn't have his best game with the ball, so much that he does without the ball that still makes him so valuable. That means that he's a bit of the fall guy, that if we don't deliver, you can look at him and go, what's he giving us when we need him? But he's so integral to what we do. And I think that's the Naby Keita problem. Naby Keita's got to do what Gini Wijnaldum does and still be able to deliver what Naby Keita does. Right.
Which is no mean feat, right?
Yeah, he's capable. Like, Naby Keita's a footballer of the year waiting to happen. He really is. He's got to stay fit.
Yeah. Well, 2 games in, he hasn't counted another injury, has he? So maybe this is his chance.
Same with Oxlade-Chamberlain. You can get very excited about a midfield. You know, you think about a midfield with, you could have either Fabinho, Wijnaldum, Henderson playing as the 6. Imagine Naby Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain. You know, Oxlade-Chamberlain's performance against Atletico Madrid just before the lockdown. Probably Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's best game in a red shirt. Yeah. To be honest with you, he was absolutely outrageous. And I think that it's mad, but that's where Liverpool can improve. You know, against bottom 12, bottom 13 teams in the league, you should be able to play Naby Keita and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain against them. Yeah. And with all due respect to Gini and Jordan Henderson, Naby Keita and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain are going to hurt them a hell of a lot more.
Although didn't they play alongside Fabinho in one of the away games in the group stages this year? And it wasn't Fabinho's kind of best game because neither of them were that disciplined about coming back.
Yeah, and I think with them, that's for Liverpool and the coaching staff. I don't think they've got a problem coaching that into them. To be fair, it's one of them things. One of their biggest strengths is taking the handbrake off them a little bit with the ball, within reason. I thought you saw against Atletico Madrid though, and some of the games leading up to that, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain really seems to be getting settled into that. And I think that's why I'd be tempted to sell Lovren and not buy a centre half. In that, I think you could use Fabinho as I think Fabinho's an outstanding centre half, and I think in Europe and against the top 6, you want Fabinho in that holding midfield role. But I think against most opposition, Jordan's going to be 31 soon, or sorry, next season he'll turn 31. You got Gini Wijnaldum as well, who can play very accomplished in that number 6 role. I think if you needed it, Fabinho going in a centre half, knowing exactly, he's played there before, he knows the Liverpool culture, knows our system. I think it'd be very difficult for Liverpool to go and sign a 3rd or 4th choice centre half. I think it'd be now impossible. So I'd rather Liverpool use Fabinho if they absolutely had to there, as much as that's a plan B. I'd rather that and have someone like Jordan Henderson in the 6 with Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, players like that around him, than sign some 3rd or 4th choice. It's just not good enough, to be honest with you. And as much as that keeps Fabinho where he is, you've then got a problem in behind you. And obviously there's a question over the goalkeeper, because Liverpool haven't had a good sub-goalkeeper. Well, in my lifetime, I don't think we've ever had one, to be honest. Maybe Kirkland and Dudek. Maybe you could argue when Kirkland was fit, but I don't know. Like, remember, I grew up Bruce Grobbel and Mike Hooper, and Mike Hooper wore marigolds. And if you don't literally watch the games back, he wore marigolds, basically. So there's an issue with what they do with the sub-goalkeeper, because I think the young lads coming through at the academy are still a bit of a way off.
You don't think Karius is going to take that job right back?
Do you know what? It's one of them. Look, if he does, then you support him and everything, but you'd have to question the decision, basically, in that I'm one of them. It's not his fault. He can only be as good as he can try and be. It's the fault of anyone who decides to pick him, in my view. So I don't think it would be fair on him. To be honest with you, there's an argument just from a mental health point of view. I just don't think it'd be fair on him.
Yeah, agree. I think that technically he may be a good backup, but I think the amount of abuse he'd get from wherever would be.
Oh yeah, there's that part also. But also he just didn't. He had some good points when he was in Turkey, but it wasn't like he had a glowing performance and they just couldn't afford him. They said
he's like an extreme. He's a bit like an extreme Lovren, in that one of the biggest things is self-awareness, and one of the big things is knowing where your limitations are. And Lovren plays in his mind as if he's Van Dijk. and that's what exposes him. And I think Karius basically plays as if he's Alisson.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As if he's one of, and
it's great description, actually.
In a mindset, I kind of get it, but it means you start doing when you do those kind of things and it goes wrong, it looks even worse. And that's the thing with Lovren. It's well intentioned, and he's going into it as a proper winner, but he's missing the self-awareness that I'd say Matip has. I think Matip knows exactly his limitations and has done a very good job at covering his weaknesses up, hiding them a little bit, and playing to his strengths. And that's why you've seen Matip, I think, improve a hell of a lot. And I don't actually think technically he's any different. I just think from a mindset point of view, he's more self-aware. Whereas with Lovren, and you look at the Merseyside derby, he's a perfect example. He's playing as if he's the best centre-half in the world.
What's the ceiling? What's the ceiling you see for Joe Gomez?
Well, funny enough, I want to make more. I should make more of it on the Anfield Wrap, really, because we did after the UEFA Cup. No, after we qualified for the Champions League, I said on a show with Neil and Paul Cope that I didn't think Liverpool would win a major trophy until they jibbed off Joe Gomez at fullback, signed Van Dijk and put them together as a partnership when it looked like we were signing Van Dijk. And then obviously Van Dijk came in the January. He came in the December, you know what I mean, the January transfer window. And I was on record saying I just think that, as a sense, if you're going to win European Cups and league titles, you need to have a Hansen and a Lawrence and a Vidic and a Ferdinand, and just the way the game's going, having someone who's good on the ball, electric with pace, electric at sort of interceptions, and someone that you think you could form a 3, 4, 5 year potential partnership together. My view was that you have to bet on that, and if that means you have a season, my view was you might have to write off a season potentially to let that blood as a partnership, to let Joe Gomez make them mistakes. Because obviously someone like Jamie Carragher, he had a long stint at left back, then at right back, and then finally just in Houlier's final season, Liverpool started to blood him as a centre-half. So that means when Jamie went into centre-half, he wasn't making the kind of mistakes you expect a young centre-half to make, because he played alongside some great centre-halves, but he'd had such a long experience at full-back. Joe Gomez, because of injuries and stuff like that, hadn't had that. So I'm a little bit surprised at just how good and how well settled Joe Gomez was. And I actually think Joe Gomez would go on to be better than Van Dijk in the way that the modern game's going. And I think there'll be less and less of a sort of a need for physical strength in the air, really. And probably our greatest centre-half ever was terrible. Alan Hansen played in an era when it really was blood and thunder. And he hated that. He didn't want to do that, but he was just so good that he could deal with it in different ways. I just think Joe Gomez is a complete Rolls Royce. I think he'll go on to be better than Van Dijk. And I think as long as he's fit and Van Dijk are fit, Liverpool are extremely lucky, because to have one centre-half you look around the world, it's such a hard position to recruit for now. Because the players who are a bit better on the ball tend to play number 6 now. You know what I mean? It's real difficult to recruit for that kind of a role. I just think if Van Dijk and Gomez stay fit, undoubtedly they're going to be the best partnership in this league for a while. I mean, anyone who can, I'd be scared if someone got a better partnership than them.
Yeah. So you don't think we'll be swapping Gomez for Maguire anytime soon? You think we'll stick with what we got?
Big Harry, the big head. Hey, look, to be fair to him, like a bit like Andy Robertson, like Maguire's story in terms of where he's got to is absolutely phenomenal. The biggest problem for United is it's a bit like signing Sammy Hippier in a way. One of Rafa's problems is Rafa wanted to play a certain way, and you need Sammy at centre half, but it puts a big onus on the rest of your team because Sammy's not got the natural pace to get yourself out of a problem if your lines are wrong. There's basically no margin for error. And I think that with Harry Maguire and United, in that it just puts such a tactical pressure on your team because he turns around like the QE2 in the sea, doesn't he? You know, he can't turn around. So where your goalkeeper is, and they've got a goalkeeper who's a Sabutio goalkeeper. He goes side to side dead well. Less so recently, but he's a goalkeeper that controls the 6-yard box. And nowadays, It used to be that you wanted a goalie who controlled his area, like Grobbelaar or Rayner at his best. Van der Sar controlled his area magnificently. Goalies now, like Alisson, control the pitch. Ederson control the pitch at their best. De Gea, no good having a 6-yard goalkeeper. And if you've got Harry Maguire in front of him, I'm not really asked who United sign. They're just always going to cut. To hit 95, 100 points, you're not doing that with that setup.
Yeah. I've seen some ridiculous social media posts from Man United fans about how they'll be in the mix next year. And I guess my thought process is similar. The other thing I think they struggle with is they seem great on the counter-attack, but they're going to play a whole load of teams who won't let them counter-attack, which will also make it harder for them, I think, to get a lot of points.
Yeah, and hey, look, that it's mad because you've got players like Zinedine Zidane who do pretty much nothing as a coach or manager, and then all of a sudden come in and or win 4 European Cups back to the back or whatever at Madrid. You look at someone like Pep's very different in terms of his technical work, in terms of what he did with Barca B. You know, he basically proven his outrageous coaching ability and addiction to the game, really, from a teaching point of view. But you look at someone like Solskjaer, you know, his record at Cardiff, some of the stories you hear coming out about that, the stories at Mulder, even when he was over there, the fact that he won't even park in Ferguson's car parking space, do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it still feels a bit to me there that maybe the tail's wagging the dog a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just can't see that. If you told me that you needed 80 points to win a league, yeah, maybe they could be competitive next year in that environment. But if you're talking 95 points plus, absolutely no chance.
Yeah. Good to hear. So when we win number 20, then it's no anyway. But you've been very gracious with your time. Thanks, Sean. There was, if you guys have one closing question, but I did have one question that I was really fascinated by. What sources do you use, whether it's books or writers, to kind of help keep you informed about what's going on? Who I'm really looking for book recommendations, actually, but it's
do you know what? Not so much nowadays because I'm not coaching as much. One of the biggest things I used to do, funnily enough, is watch the matches without commentary. I actually think subconsciously some of the morons that you have to put up with, you know, Martin Tyler and people like this, quite often I'd watch it literally muted, because you're literally watching the match. And there's also, the other thing is, are you watching the match or are you analysing the match? And that's why with Liverpool, like I've said before, I have to quite often watch at least part of the games back, if not all of them back, because I'm watching them with my chimpanzee fully out, you know, going Steve Peters. I'm watching it as a lunatic fan. I need to watch it back in a more analytical way. And I don't watch as much football as I used to. But when I did, anyone who wasn't Liverpool, sound off, and I'll be watching it in a more analytical way. In terms of stuff, I think what's come out in the last sort of decade, there's been some really good biographies. There's some great books on Rafa. If you ever get the chance to read them, there's an amazing book that was translated from Spanish into English about Rafa's time at Valencia. And it won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it really goes into the detail of what he did on the training pitch, the changes that he made in the squad, his thought process behind everything. And then obviously Balaguer did a few good books about Rafa's time at Liverpool, which goes into great detail about the transfers, what he was trying to do, the changes that he needed to make, the problems that he came into. There were a few good Mourinho biographies. Pep's got a really good one from Balaguer at his time at Barca. And then there's a great book, I think, I can't remember if it's Honigstein, but someone's done one at his time at Munich, which is really good and gives you a big insight into what that's like. And I think those kind of content out there is really, really good for giving you an insight into what's really going on there. But yeah, the biggest thing I could say is to watch the matches, but have to sound off and make your own mind up, you know. And I also think there's a lot of things where people criticise what a manager does. Yeah. I try and do it the other way. They're trying to achieve something, so you're better off going, well, why did they go with that rather than the alternative? I think that should really be like your starting point, rather than just going, oh, well, why did he do that? It's like, well, why would you do that? You know, there's a reason for them doing it. Now, whether you you agree with that or not, it's different. But I certainly think that should be your starting point. And obviously that doesn't suit the media narrative, does it? And the kind of need for 24-hour news and everything else.
No. I love the idea of turning Martin Tyler off. That sounds fantastic. And the fact you've got references into Sabutio and Steve Peters. I'm loving it. If you don't know who Steve Peters is, I'll put a link out there. So Tim, do you have a closing question for Sean?
Sure. Do you think Ryan Brewster has a place in this team going forward?
No. I think he was really, when he was coming through, he was very, very highly rated in that a couple of years ago, he was lightning fast and could basically play across the front three. So when Klopp came in, he was one of the very few players who Klopp was, for the whole academy, that Klopp was like him. Now, what's interesting is how Curtis Jones, Nico Williams, and a couple of other players have sort of gone past Ryan. Ryan got a very, very nasty injury, of course, which has done him no favours. But I think the other problem with Ryan is that because he relies on pace so much, that you've then got a major problem in terms of the subtlety and other skills in your game, because obviously Liverpool are going to come up against packed defences, very tight, compact sides. Salah and Mane are absolute masters of how to still hurt you with pace, even if you're parked on the edge of your own box. But Mane and Salah were able to go away, and you've got to remember, Mane and Salah still played for teams that were competing for league titles. So as much as it wasn't quite the same, Salah at Rome, Salah going to Chelsea, Salah going to Bar, they had to play against teams with packed defences, just at a different level of football, if you like. So they got to learn that experience. If you go and play for someone who's bottom half of the division, you're going to be able to get all them counter-attacks. And obviously that's good for you because your pace becomes an asset. But for the top clubs, you're not learning the trade and the skill set that you need to then go back into them top clubs. And I think the other thing for Ryan that's gone against him a little bit is it's just not a ruthless finisher. And worse than that, when he has had his opportunities, you're coming away with him not having that many chances. Yeah. That's kind of, when you've got a forward missing chances, in the short term, that's cool. You're not worried about that in the slightest. When you've got a forward not getting many, that's a problem. So I'd love to be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Liverpool go in that way. I think Minamino's going to be a Firmino backup. I think you might see Salah play central sometimes with Firmino in behind or Minamino in behind. I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool maybe look at a wide player on that basis, because then they can either play 4 attacking players and have a bit more in the final third, or they can rest somewhat and then put a wide player in, because obviously Mane can play right, Salah can play central, you can rotate things around there. I don't see Ryan doing anything, sadly. And I think Curtis Jones will be a big player next year. You see Curtis play a lot. He'll take the Lallana role. And it'll be interesting to see what Liverpool decide to do with Nico Williams. It's a difficult one there next year. Do you say to someone like Nico Williams, look, I'm going to look to play in the League Cup, FA Cup, try and get you some more Premier League games. If we can wrap up Champions League qualification, use you there. Or do you look for a club that's going to be competing for titles in an easier division, whether it be the Championship or abroad, and put Nico Williams out on loan so he can go and get 30, 40 games. But then if something happens to Trent, you need him. It's that thing, short-term needs for Liverpool, you keep him, but for the longer-term development of him, what's the right thing to do? And there's a few of them little headaches for Liverpool, I think.
Cool. Last question goes to you, Charlie.
Don't want to open a can of worms and return to my favorite manager in the entire world, but
tons of worms. Come on.
What aspect of Klopp and his personality and his professionalism, do you find most impressive? I read an article before talking about it's unusual to find someone who is both the tactician and the man manager that he is. In my mind, it goes beyond that in terms of his holistic approach to the club and the development and the ownership and the transfers and all of that. And he's absolutely willing to bring people on board and listen to them if they know more about whatever it is that they're hired for than he does. And then, of course, his hugs are also a massive part. My personal favorite aspect of Jurgen Klopp. What's your favorite trait of Klopp's?
I think my favourite trend of his is his ability to, it's that Gordon Ramsay thing in a way, and similar to sort of Joe Fagan back in the day, from what you hear about the boot room, in that he's just got that ability to get the best out of everyone around him. So stories that I'd heard in the club was that under Brendan Rodgers, people were guessing. So if you were in around Melwood, you just, I don't think anyone really knew the real Brendan Rodgers there, or very few did, and you couldn't really judge what kind of a mood he was in or how to react around him, and it just brought a bit of hesitancy in. Whereas I think with Klopp, a bit like a Gordon Ramsay almost style of management, if you like any big true leader, there isn't any grey. Like, you're not in any doubt. Do you know what I mean? If you're getting a bollocking off him, you're getting it, and the place is going to be in flames. You're not in a doubt. But at the same point in time, a pat on the back or a reward off him means the world. It's very difficult for a leader to kind of do that. Like, one of Rafa's problems is that Rafa's too nice. It sounds mad, but because Rafa is so nice, he couldn't build a relationship with his players, because he just then couldn't. He then couldn't get rid of you. He couldn't sell you. He couldn't drop you. So he had to stay cold to make them decisions. It's interesting that with Klopp, he can have that kind of relationship, and it doesn't affect him in the slightest in making those calls. And life is one big great contradiction, if you see what I mean. And Klopp, in a weird way, just thrives in that kind of role. In that 1 minute he can, you get the impression that FSG are in complete awe of him. So you're talking about a load of old American hedge fund guys, but then a load of 23-year-old lads from Toxteth are in awe of him at Melwood.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a special, unique talent. And I think he's also a little bit lucky in that he grew up as a son of Saki. And one of his main managers was an addict to Saki. So he's had a real grooming in a real... Not enough people sort of followed the Saki way, which is what then sort of Rafa and Mourinho basically go on to do themselves. So from a technical level, he started to learn that and go through that process. And you're already dealing with someone who's just so happens to be like a giant. He must be, 6'4" or something, who's an extrovert, who has had to really fight for everything that he's ever wanted to do, and he just has this work rate ingrained in him. So you just put those kind of dynamics together, then his experience, and then look, the reason he came to Liverpool is he knew it was a great fit, and I think you're seeing that is that everything about the club and everything about the mentality of the place, because it's probably the most emotional football club, as we all know, in the world. It's one of the biggest emotional juggernauts. And this is a guy that absolutely thrives off that, and that's exactly what he wants. And I think he's also struck lucky in that he's coming into a place that's been starved for success, and both in recruitment and the squad itself, not many of them have won stuff. And I think I saw an interesting interview this week that he said to Jordan Henderson, what's the biggest thing with him? And he said, we do whatever he says. It's not even questioned.
Yeah.
And you're going back probably Shankly Paisley, early Houllier, similar. Early Houllier, very similar. Early Benitez, very similar. Whatever he said they would do. And then at different times, Houllier and Benitez just lost a little bit of that magic dust. Having delivered the European Cup and the league, it's going to take a little while, you suspect, for that magic dust to disappear. I think the biggest problem he's got coming is, when do you now freshen this up? Like, how do you stop this going stale? Because it will. If you do nothing, bottom line is it will. And it's very difficult. Do you do a Real Madrid and just sign nobody, but then have an enormous rebuild job? Or do you start trying to bring people in, but risk disrupting things in the here and now? It's not going to happen, I don't think, from what I've seen. It's a shame. there would have been nothing better than a crop of youngsters coming through, like your Fowlers, your McManamans, that kind of thing, where you go, right, I've got the talent coming through. They'll be happy on the bench for a bit. I can completely embed them in our way of doing things. I just don't think that's there, to be honest with you. And certainly not at the level that we're now looking to be at. So I'm really intrigued as to what they do, whether, because Liverpool still see this as a dynasty and a project. Do you risk having a season where it just doesn't work and then do it the following season so you're not acting too early? I think from a management point of view, from FSG down to Klopp, it's going to be very interesting now. And I also wonder what role Nike have to play in it, in that obviously this is only rumoured and stuff like that, but the rumours were that Liverpool were very, very close to signing Rodrigo before Real Madrid had ever got near him. Liverpool, and that gives you an idea of how far and wide Liverpool are looking at young talent. I think one of the biggest problems now is that I would argue that probably Adidas and Nike have an earlier nod on what players are coming through than most football clubs.
Yeah.
And they're not shy of putting the money down on players early. And I would not underestimate how important it is that Liverpool signed up with Nike going into this next decade. We saw little bits of it over the last 10 to 15 years. I think you're going to see a lot more of it now, in that I think you're going to see Adidas and Nike have a real war in football and put some serious money down on players. I'm not saying it's Mbappe 2020 or 2021, but there are some top players that undoubtedly have an issue, because if you're 19, 18, 17, 16 and Nike come along and say, do you want a £10 million deal? And you go, yeah. And then 2 years later, a club comes in for you that's sponsored by Adidas and Nike go, we gave you all that dough. You're going to go where we tell you to go.
Interesting.
Potentially half the world's ruled out of moving for a signing. When you're talking about like 15, 16, 17-year-old next Messi level type players.
Yeah.
So, I think it's interesting that Liverpool were in talks with Mbappe when he was at Monaco. Allegedly, Liverpool were looking at Rodrigo quite heavily when he was at Santos. That shows some confidence in Liverpool to be looking at players who are falling into the category of your next Messi's, your next Ronaldo's, and actually feeling like they've got the gravitas to be able to hold them kind of conversations. Jordan Sancho was going to sign for Liverpool before he went to Manchester City. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's where Liverpool look to play in. I'd be quite interested in Liverpool going after Sarr at Watford. I wouldn't have any issues with that at all.
Yeah.
I think that could be a very FSG Jurgen Klopp type move that might go under the radar. I think he might be one to add to that front three that could go on to be another megastar. I'd have no issues at all if Liverpool signed someone like Sarr this summer.
Sounds good to me.
With Mane in there to be his countryman, to kind of be like that mentor.
It's funny. I don't think they do that. They obviously don't do it for this reason. But it is funny how we do sign a few players who have hurt us. Like Mane bangs the hat-trick, I think, and against us when he's at Southampton. Obviously, Minamino, deal was done, but he obviously plays really well against us as well. Obviously Van Dijk was just Van Dijk, wasn't he? Whoever he played against, he was absolutely magnificent. And obviously in the lead up to Roma, Liverpool already had been looking at Alisson for a long time as well. But when you're scouting Roma, you're not marking Alisson down at that point in time, are you? Either ahead of playing him or whatever. So I think it's interesting that maybe Liverpool have looked at. Liverpool know every player in the world. Most clubs do. I think certainly Liverpool do. But I think certainly when Liverpool, it's interesting that even so, there's still quite a few players who have done really well against Liverpool. Like I think Wijnaldum scores against a Klopp team at James's Park, and they win 1-0 against us before he joined. So I just wonder whether, as much as Liverpool are doing the scouting, that they'll throw names in and Klopp goes, do you know what, he did do this against us, and if he can, in that kind of approach. And they also like the hidden gems that want to come in and learn. And I think that Sarr's got a lot of technical ability about him, a lot of athleticism, age, settled in English football now. Ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah. So we just need Watford to be relegated to follow that pattern, right? So.
Well, yeah, Definitely.
All right. Sean, this has been really fascinating. Thank you so much. Long may the magic dust last.
Keep celebrating, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to sign off there. If you're listening, we'll talk to you next week.